Hello and welcome to another Steer Your Career podcast. On the episode that you're going to listen to now, it is our first two-time guest on the show, I believe so. Eric Hudson. He is one of our amazing personalized coaches that we have in the Kadima program. When people join Kadima, they get paired with a dedicated coach that works with them until they get a better job. And Eric is one of our OG. He started with us here at Kadima and is one of our finest coaches, although they're all quite fine. Anyway, we're going to dig into negotiation. We're going to dig into mindset. We're going to dig into confidence building and the tactics and strategies that will work for you and work for our clients to get better jobs, and some of the anti-patterns that you got to be mindful of and not fall into traps. So I think you'll really enjoy this episode. As a reminder, there are three ways that we at Kadima Careers help you. One, personalized coaching, where you get paired with somebody like Eric or one of our other 15 amazing coaches, where we work with you until you get a better job. We help you get more interviews, more offers, and then we help you negotiate. We also have group coaching, where you don't get the dedicated coach, you don't get the negotiation support, but you get the community, you get the accountability, you get our entire framework about how to implement that and how to land more interviews, offers, and money. And then finally, we do offer a do-it-yourself digital course, the job acquisition method. That is key to all our programs. And if you're someone who likes to do things more on your own at a self-pace, we do offer the digital course, which has a 4.35 rating from our clients and increases confidence by 16%. It's a great course. All of our products and services come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. But enough about plugging our stuff. Now let's get into this episode with me and Eric Hudson. But before you do, the last three words I'll leave you with are: own your career. Hello and welcome to another Steer Your Career podcast. This is a very special episode. I have my good friend and one of Kadima's best coaches, Eric Hudson. Eric was a former Amazon bar raiser. And if you don't know what a bar raiser is, it's a well-calibrated interviewer at Amazon. And Amazon is one of the hardest places to get into in terms of structured interviews. Eric is an expert in this space, and he's also a coach to a lot of our clients. And today we are going to talk about what makes some clients really super successful and what may be holding some clients back, and what the client can do, what the candidate can do to accelerate their career. But before we get into that, Eric, share with the audience a little bit about who you are, although you were on a previous episode, which is our second most downloaded episode, so only trumped by Ethan Evans recently. Anyway, share a little bit about who you are, Eric.
Yeah. I have been dethroned, but I am in good company. If I get dethroned by Ethan Evans, then, I'm okay with that. But thanks for the introduction, Alan, and good to be back on the podcast. Eric Hudson, I am a director of talent acquisition at DocuSign. And as Alan mentioned, I am a bar raiser, or I was a bar raiser at Amazon, where I did over 1,000 interviews. I really enjoy being an executive coach. It's something that I'm very proud of. This year, my goal is to help over 100 people. And, in this year too, I've already been able to get many people very large raises, and a lot of people have gotten really good jobs. So very excited to continue to do that. And again, glad to be back and talk.
And for those that are not aware, we are filming this in March of 2024, during this time when everyone's, the economy sucks and the job market's tough. Yeah, the economy is a little shaky, the job market is tough, but people are still getting jobs. And the forward progress and the action are leading to interviews and opportunities. And Eric, I'm really intrigued because you support about, I think, 8 or 10 of our clients currently. You've had lots of success in the past of getting clients great jobs, of empowering them to get great jobs. Looking back on clients that are getting success, what are some of the attributes that they do, that the actions that they take, that you find to contribute to their success?
Definitely. The first thing I got to say is that in March of 2024, where we're at right now, There's a lot of people that question today's job market and are people getting offers and jobs. So the first thing I want to make sure I talk about is that there are a lot of people getting jobs still right now. I still to this day have a lot of people reaching out to me on a weekly basis about offers that are 500,000 plus in the tech community. And over the last 3 months or 3 weeks, actually, I've had about 4 per week. So I want to make sure that it's out there that there are jobs. People are getting jobs. People are getting really good jobs. So the first thing I got to say is confidence. A lot of people who are not getting jobs or the ones that are getting jobs are still confident. They're still focusing on doing the right thing and moving forward. You have to get away from the self-limiting belief philosophy that people are just not getting jobs, because that's just not the case. Unemployment is still low. And yes, you do have to be more creative right now in this environment to get jobs, but it's still happening. So that's the first thing. You got to remember people are still getting jobs, and it's your everyday person. It's not someone who's brilliant or has an O visa or a Harvard MBA or whatever. These are normal people, bachelor degree people that have very normal backgrounds. So that's the first thing. But to answer your question, so what are the attributes that help people land jobs? What are the attributes that help people be able to really get over that barrier? The first thing is making sure you look at yourself in the mirror and realize what you want to do. Because there's a lot of times when I'm working with someone and they're trying to do a shotgun approach. They're trying to either just get into tech and they're like, oh, I want to be a customer service person. Oh, I want to be a consultant. Oh, I want to be a salesperson. That's not going to work, right? You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. And before you begin your job search, you have to make sure that you understand, what am I going to go after and what do I need to do to get there? So being able to align with a North Star of what you want and then going all in to get it, right? The next thing is you can't get anywhere in this economy and with everything going on without connections, without networking, without boosters, without people that can connect you and get you to that next area. That or exec search firms. Because while offers are happening, one area that is gotten harder is going from the application or the search of the job to getting the first interview. That's one thing that I have seen less of in this market, but you have to be able to network, because if you can't network, then you're not going to land the job. One thing to note as well is you have to be creative. You can't just go into when you're reaching out to individuals, when you're networking, when you're trying to make that connection, you can't just go into it with just a, hey, can you refer me to this job, right? You have to be able to develop a quick relationship with that person. Also, a myth, a lot of people think, oh, I have to have strong ties to be able to get a job or to land a job. That's not true. Some of the best jobs and the best positions that you can get come from what I call loose ties, right? So that could be a secondary connection on LinkedIn. It could be a third connection on LinkedIn, right? Another thing that makes those people successful is taking an approach where instead of just shotgunning out a bunch of emails, be more targeted. So find commonalities with people that you're trying to network with. It could be a university, it could be, a hobby, it could be a group that you're in, right? Some of those things. Another thing too is you will see a drastic increase in connections, especially if you're an executive, if you can get introductions to happen. Introductions are very important in the executive community and executive recruiting. Like, I've never seen any executive recruiter say, we'll just go reach out to them. They'll say, I'll make an introduction for you. So you always want to make sure you have, if possible, someone to introduce you. Because if you have those secondary connections, it means there's somebody that knows that secondary connection that you're connected to. So if they can make that connection for you, your conversion rate for people that you reach out to is going to increase dramatically, right? I would say those are a few of the things that help people get jobs faster. Don't just lean on people. Use the secondary connection, use introductions, align with what you want and what you want to do. And lastly, you got to have activity. You can't just wait and you can't just assume that the rec and the job is going to come to you. This is not 2021. This is not a zero rate environment, right? Rates are high, higher for longer. You have to be able to get out there and you have to have activity. So if you are not reaching out, if you're not getting creative, if you're not working with a coach potentially who can help you and enable you and give you the right direction to get there, then you're not going to be able to move to that next step. And you got to be able to continue to network, because just applying to a bunch of jobs is really more of you're just trying to use brute force to get a job. There's finesse that has to happen strategically, and you need to make sure that you're building those connections, and then you're getting a job. And one last thing, Alan, I know this is a very long response to what you just said, but another thing too is when you're getting a referral and they say, yes, I'll refer you, I'm happy to refer you, that's great. Or don't just have them refer you into the system or the ATS. Because if you do that, you're going to go into an ATS. And I've been in recruiting my whole life. There are some really good recruiters out there. There's some really shitty recruiters out there. And not every one of them are checking their applications every single day, or maybe even weekly, or maybe even monthly. So I recommend, if you have someone to refer you, you have them send an email to the hiring manager and then CC the recruiter, and then have a few bullet points of why you're great. And I would just go ahead and arm them with that information so they can send it on your behalf. Because I'll tell you, when I was at Amazon, I started doing that. I started referring people through the referral tool, right, and there was not many hits. As soon as I started getting aggressive and started sending emails to the hiring managers and then CCing the recruiter, my hit rate went through the roof. And I ended up using that same process at Amazon. And there's been at least 10 or 20 people who have gotten successfully into Amazon doing that same philosophy. So those are some of the things that I've seen that's been successful. And I think a lot of people can utilize that. And if they're not doing it now, they'll see an increase in activity.
Totally agree with that. You talked a lot about the confidence up front to keep going at it, because this is a process that you will get a lot of rejection before you get that success. What I've seen in the market is now you have all these automated AI resume application software and applicant submission software and resume creation software like TLHQ and JobScan.ai. So there's churning out all these applications that are going into that cold channel. When I was at Google and Salesforce, we were getting thousands of resumes. I was just speaking to someone today, and they said there was a role that had 18,000 resumes for like a program manager. I think it was at Google. And I thought 1,000 was a lot back then. And now they were saying like 18,000. So the cold application is really a needle in the haystack now if you are not recruited from exec search or the referral. And to your point, all referrals are not created equal. And it is that personalized note that will get someone to stand out, and earning that advocacy from someone to do so. You can't just ask somebody to do that. You really have to earn that relationship and have that strong relationship where someone's like, hey, dude or dudette, how can I best help you get a role here or something like that? So they're willing to go that extra mile.
Exactly. And just being able to give them that ammo, right? Because if they don't have that ammo to sell you, right, it makes it a lot harder. And I would even sometimes even use the internal tools beyond just email, right? Because there are some cultures out there, right? DocuSign is one of them, where Slack is more of the communication tool of choice versus an email, right? And there are some places like that are older or more old school, like maybe like an Apple or IBM or something like that, where everything happens through email, right? So I would arm your referrer and say, like, whatever the best form of communication is, if you could send them a Slack or send them an email, then you'll see your hit rate go up.
On the interview side, so a lot of what you were talking about here is to get people to the interview. Then one of your strengths that I've always seen, and I think what you talked about here is critical, you got to get the interview before you get the offer. What do you see some of your best clients do to convert interviews to offers?
Yeah. So that's like the big thing that I say is, and this all goes back to really, this probably happened 10, 20 years ago. Star interviewing, behavioral interviewing became the norm. And now it's really everywhere. You have to, like, everyone asks behavioral questions. Yes, you can get lucky and there'll be a conversational interview and the person will just, I really like this person. So they'll be inclined to hire. But you also have to be prepared with the most impactful examples, behavioral examples you have. And you can't just go into it telling a story, because a lot of people think just telling a story is, oh, I'm good to go. I have my story. No, you have to remember this is a sales presentation of yourself. You are selling yourself to them, and you are trying to show the impact that you created in the past, and you're dropping that in the future of that company, right? So you have to be prepared to be able to answer that. But before you even do that, there are some certain basic things you can do to make yourself stand out. And these are things that you think would be very basic and fundamental, but a lot of people just don't do them. And one thing is having great lighting, right? One thing is having a great background. One is make sure that you have a nice bookshelf behind you, which you have behind you right now. Don't have like your dirty clothes on in your bed in the background, right? Have your dress code be one above the whatever the company is wearing. So if the company is a casual tech company like Meta or Amazon and they're wearing t-shirts, wear a button down, wear some dark jeans or a button down and some slacks, something like that. So go ahead and make yourself stand out. Another thing is we talk about this a lot at Kadima, is having 20 behavioral stories ready. And that is essential because you have to go into that interview and there's a lot of confidence that you have to have in every kind of interview, right? And I always talk about content and delivery when you're using your behavioral examples. And those behavioral examples need to be the things that you're the most proud of. They can't just be, let me tell you about a time when I set up a Zoom call for somebody, right? It has to be transformational stuff. Let me tell you about a time when I launched an India Development Center for my company, and it saved the company millions of dollars.
Right.
And it saved the company millions of dollars in perpetuity. And it was very ambiguous. There was no processes. I had to set all the processes. I had to navigate the ambiguity. I had to work with vendors that were trying to overcharge me, and I had to negotiate with them to get them down to a small amount. And as a result, at the end of all this, after 10 months, it was launched, it was ready to go, and now it's one of the biggest driving points for our profit at this company, right? So you have to be able to think about what is the bottom line, right? Because another thing too is a lot of people will just give the example and they won't talk about the big results of it, right? They'll talk about like the short-term results, but you need to also talk about the long-term results. And especially if you're an executive, you have to be thinking about what did this initiative do for the company? How did it return it for the company? What were the metrics for the company? What was the data for the company? And you have to sell that. You can't just tell the story, you have to sell it. So the people that are doing very well are doing that. Another thing is be engaging and be exciting in your interview. Bring the energy, right? You can tell. Like I was working with someone the other day who got a job with Amazon, and they brought the energy in one of their examples that we were preparing for. And like the first two, it was just dry and monotone. And I said, okay, let's take a step back. You were pumped about that example. I could feel it. I felt the energy hit me when you gave me that example. Like you were excited. You sold me with just your energy. I was like, I need some more of that in how you are able to give me the example. But those first two that you gave me, they were okay with the content, but how you delivered them, you did not give it to me, right? So that's another thing too, is like in any kind of big speech out there, right? And I'm showing this over history. If you look at over history and look at the big speeches and look at what they say, sometimes it's not just what they say, it's how they say it, right? So you got to make sure when you're in those interviews that you're doing that. And then lastly, I'll say this, don't let them leave the interview room without feeling like you're the one, right? And you're not going to be able to do that just telling some transactional story. So tell the most transformational story, work on your delivery, work on your energy. And then with that last impact statement, the impact statement is you did all this, you overcame this problem, you created this solution. This is the impact that I created. Because I was there, this impact was the result, right? And that is the selling point. And I always tell everybody to use that last when selling. That's the last thing you say when you tell your interview example. And it allows you to then sell your interviewer on what you've done, right? And then obviously they'll have some follow-up questions and you got to be prepared for those. Those are the things that really stand out. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is the impact is super important and you have to be able to sell it. And that's what's going to be able to get the person a job. And that's what my clients that have succeeded have done so well, is they've been able to really be able to sell themselves in a big way. And also you have to prep, and that's how they get there. Hopefully you have a coach. If you don't have a coach, hopefully you have a spouse. Hopefully you have a friend that can ask you questions and prepare and give you feedback And then even then, after you're done doing that, you need to record yourself or video yourself, even better, video yourself, given the example, and then practice until it's perfect. Practice until it's perfect. And that's really how people separate themselves.
Yeah, that's so true. So you've worked with lots of successful clients. You've gotten people into Amazon and Google and Facebook and all these great companies. But I know you and I have, we were talking before we joined this episode of sometimes there's clients that are not necessarily taking some of the actions or steps that are leading to a lack of interviews. And I think the bigger challenge I've seen with a lot of our clients is getting the interview. Because I think, especially with you, with our coaches, people are generally pretty damn prepared for the interview process. But what are some of the challenges you've seen with some clients that are not getting interview volume that we really encourage people to get?
Yeah, the first thing is just thinking the application is the end all be all. I've had a lot of people who just apply to a bunch of jobs
Mhm.
and they think that the applications are the most important thing when they're not, right? And you have to go back to the basics of, again, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? That's my North Star. That's where I'm going. And then are you doing the right networking? Are you having the right informationals? Because if you're not doing that piece, and you're not hitting that activity, then you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And applications are great, but it's just you're throwing your name into a black hole, and it may never get reviewed. You're not getting the opportunity to be judged, right? It'd be one thing if you threw your name into the black hole and then they came back and said you're not a fit, right? You're going to get a canned rejection letter. They're going to select all. They're going to move to trash. You're going to get a canned rejection letter, and you're like, Eric, I've been rejected by this company. No, you haven't. They haven't even looked at it. And that's one thing. You can't use that as a rejection reason. Because if you use that as a rejection reason, then you're not even getting opportunities to be judged. So those who are not getting to those opportunities, you have to hit your activity. And for those at home, Kadima has a method where a networking accountability that you have to hit. And if you're not hitting those numbers, that's our program. And Nick Saban always says it best, right? Trust the process.
Yeah.
And how does he get all those big recruits and those 5 stars and everything? Because he has a process to get you to national championships. He has a process to get you to the NFL. And that's a proven methodology. And it took a long time for him to be able to build the reputation where he could say, look at this process. But before he got there, he was building what he called the process and the standard. And he challenges people. He's, hey, okay, what do you want? I want to get this job. I want to be a VP of software development. Right. Okay, great. Do you know what that entails to get there? So coming back to Kadima, we do the same thing. We have the same process, right? Okay, oh, I want to be a VP of TA. Oh, I want to be a first round draft pick. Great. A lot of people want that. But do you know what it takes? Do you know what it entails to get to that spot, right? And it requires you to put in the activity. Oh, okay, I'm really busy right now. It's Easter, it's performance calibrations. There's a lot of things going on in my life. Okay, great. We'll pause for that week, get it out of your system, and the following week get back to it, right? And be consistent with it. Because if you're not consistent with it, then you're not going to get the results that you want. You have to follow the program and you have to follow the process. And people continuously are not disciplined with that process. And the ones that are not disciplined with that process come back and say, I'm not getting results. But if your numbers are not where they need to be, then you're not going to be there. You're not going to get the job. And also, don't go through the motions with the numbers, because that's another thing that I see. A lot of people will just go through the motions to get to the activity, right? Be intentional, be targeted, and focus on, you're having information with somebody at Databricks. That's fine, but there's no open position there. And it's great for long term, but you want to be intentional. You want to be able to find a connection to a role that's potentially open or something along those lines. So I'm going on a tangent, but basically what I'm trying to say is try to follow the process and try to meet the standard of making yourself better every single week. If you can do that, if you can follow that, then success will come.
Yeah, and I like the analogy to Nick Saban, trust the process. And the process that you're referring to is if people identify 40 target organizations, companies where they want to focus on, if people will reach out to 30 people per week, and those people can be loose connections, and you talked about the strength there of the importance of loose connections, people that you haven't spoken to in a while, or new connections, if you create those 20 star stories so that you are ready for any interview, if you apply to 10 applications, and this is important to what you said, Eric, about not just chasing numbers, because if all 10 of those applications are just cold applications, you're just throwing your 10 applications into a haystack, and your needle is not going to get chosen there. So you need to be focused on those referrals. And the best way to get those referrals are 5 informational interviews per week, ideally at companies or organizations where you want to work, where you don't know people already, and ideally that are hiring people like you. So if you do that and you trust the process, it will work. And it's not like this is the only method that works. Nick Saban's not the only national championship football coach. There's lots of processes that work, but if you look at any of those successful programs, they all have a process, and they get buy-in and they get results.
Exactly. You get to the offer stage, and then we also obviously help you negotiate, and then hopefully you get that
Yeah.
offer that gets you in that better job and gets you in that better place, which is the whole point of academia.
And I always find it as a personal challenge for me because we want 100% of our clients to succeed. And we're always trying to figure out how we can help to encourage people, help to maintain that accountability, help to modify behavior to get the results that people are hoping that will work. And sometimes I find that we have clients that focus too much attention on their LinkedIn profile, too much attention on their resume. And we do work on that, and we get them in objectively perfect, subject good enough shape. But then to your point, Eric, it's really about building those relationships and taking lots of swings at the plate too.
Exactly, exactly. And I'll tell you that most new organizations that I've built and been able to help scale with, because I've been recruiting for a long time, whenever a new leader comes in, that leader then usually brings in people that her leadership team is telling her who to hire, right? And they usually come from referrals. A lot of hiring happens, especially when building a new organization, from referrals. So going back to what I was initially talking about, if you can get somebody that knows that person or is connected to that person to connect you with them, that will get you in there a lot faster, right? I won't be a dead horse here, but try to make sure you're utilizing those secondary connections and use introductions, because that's how you're going to get to convert. Because another thing too that comes up from a lot of people is I can't get people to respond to me. I'm doing them 30 reach outs and I'm getting 2 people responding, and then they ghost me and they won't talk to me. So don't just throw spaghetti against the wall. Make sure you're being very intentional and try a new approach. Try getting someone to introduce you, because you'll be very surprised at how quickly your conversion rate will go up.
And also, you got to be comfortable though with a lot of non responses, especially on LinkedIn. Only about 20 to 40% of people are active on LinkedIn. Like you and I are quite active on there. A lot of job seekers are active there. Not all hiring managers are active there. So that's one thing. And also, not everyone is going to be responsive to a cold outreach. I always was. I know you are too. That's how we met. I think I reached out to you,
Yeah,
Cole, but not everybody will do that. So that's okay. It's like swinging at the plate. Maybe you get a 30% on base percentage, 40% on base percentage. But if you take enough swings, you'll get on base and you'll score some runs.
exactly. Exactly. And sometimes it can take 2, 3 weeks for someone to respond to you.
Yeah.
People are just not on LinkedIn every day. If you're not in recruiting or you're not in career development or career acceleration, it's or you're not just actively looking for a job, most people don't say, "Oh, I can't wait to go on LinkedIn to look at my LinkedIn newsfeed." That's not the first thing that they do. And so you just got to be patient sometimes.
Yeah. Which is why if you have the person's email, try email. Email is even more responsive than LinkedIn, I find. Cool. And we're running low on time here, Eric, but you did talk about our negotiation. And that's one of your expertise as well. And I know you and I are competitive sometimes, and with Randy, our other coach, about who can get people the most money. What are some tips that you've seen some of your clients do well to help you help them the most? And then on the flip side, how have people maybe cut their knees out from under them in the process?
Yeah, and you could probably answer that in one stroke. I guess the first thing is, and this is rule number one in negotiation, or one of the top rules in negotiation is make sure you're never telling what you're making on the front end, because if you say that, then you're pigeonholing yourself. And I'll tell you that when you say a number, you are putting in the ceiling. When they say a number, they're putting in the floor, right? So be careful and try to keep that open-ended best you can and try to deflect to the end, because if you don't, then it's very hard to recover. You can recover, and I teach a lot of people to recover, but it's hard to recover when that happens. Rule number two is never accept the first offer given to you, because if most likely when an offer is given to you, there is a second offer in the back pocket of the recruiter waiting for a counter, right? So this is like the first lowball offer, and they're going to have that second offer ready to you, right? I just started watching Suits. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Suits, Alan, but Harvey always has the second offer in his suit pocket, right? So never accept the first offer because it's not the best one. Another thing too is overcoming that, right? So overcoming when people come to me like, hey, I'm in this situation. A competing offer trumps everything. It gives you leverage. So if you have a competing offer, that first offer that you gave is no longer valid, or that first expectation that you gave is no longer valid. So I compare negotiating to poker, and a good bluff, it is only going to help you up and set you up for success. Some people don't like bluffing because they think it's like telling a white lie or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to maximize your compensation. And I guarantee you, there's other people on the team who are probably not as good employees as you who are bluffing. So when you go into that job and that person's making $50,000 more than you, but you're running circles around them in performance, right? Think about that little fact. They were willing to bluff, but you were not willing to bluff. And that's the reason why you're being paid less than them. So consider that and use a bluff to be able to get you more money. Another thing is collaborating with the recruiter, right? Asking the recruiter to close the gap. Hey, how can we work together to close the gap? A lot of time, if they don't have a magic wand, the recruiters don't have a magic wand. So you're not going to get what you want on that call. You have to play the long game in negotiating, right? When you ask the recruiter or you get the recruiter and they say, let me see what I can do, you're in a good spot if they're going to say, let me see what I can do. Because that means they're going to facilitate with the hiring manager, with the comp team, and they're going to come back to you with hopefully a higher offer. So just sit tight. If they say, let me see what I can do, get off the call. Another thing is never accept a job offer on the phone. If the recruiter says, okay, if I get you 300,000, would you accept it? Don't say yes. Always
on the first phone call, you mean?
On the first phone call, on any of the phone calls, if they're just like, hey, if I get you 350, like you said you wanted 350,000, if I get you 350,000, would you accept it? Hold on. I need to review it with my spouse, my partner, and let me get back to you. This gives you time to digest everything, make sure that everything is good to go so that you don't have any buyer's remorse if they get it and they're like, oh, you said that you would accept it. It also puts you in a bad situation. You always want to have leverage, and that puts you in a position where it's leverage. Another thing to be aware of is if they say, okay, all right, you said you want 400,000, how low can you go? What's the lowest that you'd be willing to take, right? A lot of people play into this and they say, I would go as low as 360, right? You just negotiate against yourself, right? You just gave them ammo to negotiate less, right? So don't fall for that, right? That's something that happens all the time. And then lastly,
how do you answer that question instead?
I would say that's a good question. I'm not going to negotiate against myself. Yeah, I've stated to you what my expectations are. Could you please go see what you can do? And again, how can we work together to close this gap? Because another thing is you don't know unless you do know sometimes. I was working with somebody who was negotiating an offer with Lyft a few weeks ago. And I got on levels.fyi. They made an offer for 300. I saw in New York City that they offered 420 for a technical product manager. I go, ask for 420. She was scared to death to ask for 420. But she did, right? And she was on the call and they're like, how low can you take? Right. And she goes, I reiterate to you, 420,000 is my expectation. How can we work together to close the gap on that? They came back at 390, but she went 300 to
Yeah,
390.
if she had
Right?
said 360, she would have left 30,000 on the table.
Yeah. So you want to basically, you could be direct with them, or you could say, look, I've told you what my expectations are, right? And I'm not going to negotiate against myself. How can we work together, close this gap, right? And so yeah, so that's what I would do. And then lastly is if they say no, there's no way, absolutely no way, we're not going to be able to get this done. A lot of people are very scared of that response. And it is one of three options of responses you're going to get. There's the yes, there's a, I don't know, that's high, let me get back to you. And then there's the no way, right? Talk them off the ledge, right? Reiterate to them, hey, this is my number one company. Doesn't have to be your number one company, but
No,
tell
everyone's
them
your number one company all the time.
you're working the system, right? This is my number one opportunity. I want to make this work, right? You've been an advocate for me this entire time, and I really appreciate it. And I'd like for you to be an advocate for me throughout this process. It would mean a lot to me. I have a competing offer, and I'm trying to mitigate the financial risk by walking away from that offer. So, how can we work together to close the gap on this? Again, keep the questions back towards them because you don't know how, but they know how. And you've now got the recruiter back on your side. They're now an advocate for you. And they're going to go say, and the goal is to get them to say the magic words, let me see what I can do. Because when they do that, then they're going to go there for you. And the last thing here is, and I'll finish on this one, Alan, is if that doesn't work, I recommend the backdoor approach, which is to go to the hiring manager and pull on the hiring manager's heartstrings. Say, I'm really excited to work for you. This is something that like you working for you and working for this company is something that I want. This is where I want to be. I do have a competing offer that was higher, but I'm getting a lot of pushback from the recruiter and they're not willing to budge. And I want to come here and I want to run here and I'm really excited about the opportunity here. Is there anything that you could do on your end to lean in to help me increase this offer so I can come and join this company, right? And something you got to remember for those at home that don't know, the recruiter is just a broker. They're a mediator. They're a real estate agent. The hiring manager is the one making the decisions and making the approvals. So
They're not even getting commission. They're just incented to close the deal. They don't even care how much the deal's for.
Exactly. And the hiring manager, and I've seen it happen several times where the hiring manager will say, hey, recruiter, I talked to Eric and because they've been approving the offers and not approving the offers that you've been sending, or maybe not. Maybe the recruiter didn't even show them the offer. Who knows? Sometimes that happens. And so the hiring manager will then say, let's give them an extra $20,000 and let's close them out. And this happened to me. I had a recruiter call me that I'd offered at Amazon who we were being very stingy on the base. And she called me directly and she goes, hey, I've been going back and forth with a recruiter on this. I want to accept it. I just want to close and I want to come work for you. And I'm just so stuck on this base salary. And I knew that we had about $8,000 left on the base, but I also knew we had an extra $10,000 on the sign-on bonus. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I won't say her name. I'll give you $8,000 more on the base and $10,000 more on the sign-on bonus, but I literally cannot give you anything else. And I'll talk to the recruiter and I'll make sure we make that happen. And she goes, if you do that, I will accept today. I go, okay, great. So we did. And so that's just an example. I'm obviously I'm pretty good at negotiating, but if someone pulls on my heartstrings like that a little bit, I'm willing to bend a little bit. And even if it is a little bit on the company's or my budget side, sometimes people will react that way. We're all human at the end of the day, and you got to utilize that. So those are some of my negotiation tips, and hopefully that is helpful.
Cool. And I do want to wrap up. I know you have date night tonight, I think.
I do.
So I don't want Leah to get upset with me or you. But before we leave, the last two questions I have for you, and you've dropped lots of gems today, but what is one last piece of sick career advice that you'd like to share with our audience?
One last bit of sick. I think I did give a lot today. I would say on the negotiation side, right? I would say that the big thing that I would focus on would be to not be scared to make a counteroffer. And I say that because a lot of people are scared to death to ask for more money. And I'll tell you this, when they make the offer to you, the ball is in your court. The job is yours. You are just negotiating terms, right? Everyone does it. They expect it. It's going to happen. Don't be scared to ask for more money. And another thing is, I've only seen 2 times where offers gotten rescinded in my entire career. And I've seen thousands of offers, thousands. I've only seen 2 kinds. One, when the person was berating the recruiter and being rude and not being cordial and respectful or being disrespectful, or when it lost funding. The role
Yep.
lost funding and they had to rescind the offer, which is outside of your control
Right.
anyway.
And it would have
Right?
happened if they didn't negotiate in that case.
And,
You
and
didn't lose
sometimes people
funding.
say,
You
yeah,
didn't
and
lose
sometimes
because the price went up. It just lost funding because that role was no longer being hired for.
exactly, exactly. And some people say that they pull offers for just an egregious ask, which I can see that happening. But if you're cordial and respectful
Yeah.
about it, they still won't pull it. They'll
Right.
just come, but hey, let's just talk about more realistic. This is the highest, like, no way I'm not going to be able to do that. This is the highest I'm going to be able to give you. That's all that's going to happen, right? As long as you are respectful, as long as you are cordial. So ask for what you want to ask for. Make sure you're using the right verbiage. Be cordial and respectful. Don't negotiate against yourself. And then try to get the recruiter to please see what they can do on their side so that they're going back and they're getting you more money.
Awesome. And then, Eric, last question for you. How can people find you, reach out to you, and also share about your book that you've written as well?
Yeah. So, Raising the Amazon Bar is a book that I wrote about my time at Amazon and how to ace the Amazon interview. I was an Amazon bar raiser, so a lot of people come to me about how to get jobs at Amazon. And I've gotten lots and lots of jobs at Amazon. A lot of people jobs at Amazon, not just when I was a recruiter, but probably just as much at this point as a coach. And so I wrote a book based on how to get a job there, how to negotiate with Amazon recruiters, and you can find it on Amazon under Raising the Amazon Bar. As far as contacting me, you can find me on LinkedIn under Eric Hudson. Please reach out and happy to talk more.
Awesome, Eric. Thank you for the time, and we'll see how this podcast does versus your first one, which is number 2 on our all time download list.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Alan.